And we are live. What up, guys? Jason Confused Podcast. I'm Jeremiah Broderick. Joining me, as always, Matt Mislinski. And we are joining you day after kind of a brutal loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. This week, we have 3 games to react to. We had a win over the Cleveland Cavaliers and losses to the Spurs and Thunder. Matt, I know this week was kind of a measuring stick week. You could see it coming up on the schedule where you had the top 2 teams in the West, a team we could easily see in the Eastern Conference Finals this year. This was kind of the week where we found out, does this team match up against the best of the best? Because all year we've really beaten up on the dregs and the middling teams of the league. And this is kind of where we find out what this team is made out of versus playoff competition. How are we feeling they did?
I don't know that I feel close. Yeah, I don't feel any closer to an answer on that. In the Spurs game, I mean, the game against Cleveland, we were, outside of Nikola Vucevic, who was out for a month with a fractured finger, but we had Jalen, we had Jason in that game. They were missing Jarrett Allen, but were otherwise pretty healthy. And I thought that was the only game where I was like, okay, these are teams that could see each other in a late playoff series, and I thought that was a good game for us. I liked our defense a lot, all of that. Then we play the Spurs. Jaylen Brown gets ejected by a wildly overzealous official in the second quarter. Yeah, we'll get to that
later. Yeah.
And then Jason Tatum doesn't play against the Thunder, and Derek White is missing from that game as well, which I thought his presence was sorely missed in that game.
Yeah.
And we'll get to why that was as well. But it felt like they had the opportunity to be these like measuring stick games, and instead I'm like, yeah, we just weren't the Celtics in these games. Like, we were missing Jaylen Brown, who's been all season by far our best player, because an official missed a call and another official didn't like his reaction to that. And then against the Thunder, no Jason Tatum, no Derek White. And I just think, I mean, there are a lot of points that we can get through about these games individually and things that I think we did learn. But overall, I don't feel closer to an answer on, okay, does that give us an idea of how we stack up? I know we play the Thunder later this month. I'm looking forward to that game as hopefully a better barometer of what we're capable of against them, hopefully with everybody or at least most of the team healthy, obviously outside of Vucevic.
See, I feel like we did get an answer. That the answer is this team is currently constructed is probably not a top 5 team in the NBA. Now, the hope is if Jason Tatum's at 100%, then we are. But all season we've seen it where this is a team that plays hard every night. They're focused every night. They don't have off nights. And because of that, we've been able to beat up on any team that's worse than us. Where in past years it's been the opposite, where we can just like cruise through any game so they lose focus during points in the season. Right now it feels like their focus is great, but they're just not as good as some of these top teams. Now, if Jason Tatum comes back to being a top 5 player in the league, that would change it. And, I mean, it's tough to have this amount of pressure coming back from an injury, but I think the fact is how far this team makes it in the playoff is going to be determined based on how good Jason Tatum is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult in the NBA in general to categorize anything based on health, because I think every team deals with health issues. Outside of Jason Tatum, the Celtics have been very fortunate this season with a lack of injuries. I'm going to knock on some wood real quick. If Derek White plays yesterday, I think we beat the Thunder in that game. And that's kind of where I'm at, of like, Jason Tatum didn't have to be a top 5 player for us to win that game. I think we need arguably our second best player this season to just be there. Not to have a great game, not to go off, whatever. If Derek White is in that game for 25 to 35 minutes, I think we beat that Thunder team. And there are a couple reasons for that. Namely, specifically, the Thunder had a bad shooting night from 3. We made a decision, and it carried us throughout the whole game. We are going to double or triple team Shea, and that wing 3, we're just going to leave them open. All game, consistently, anybody, AJ Mitchell, Lou Dort, like whoever it was, that wing 3 was available to them all game. They had a bad shooting night from 3, and then they shot 72% from inside the three-point line. If Derek White is on the basketball court, that doesn't happen. And so for me, in a game that came down to the final shot of the game, in a game that Oklahoma City won by 2 points, if Derek White's in that game, they don't shoot the same percentage from inside the arc because he's the best shot blocking guard in the NBA. He's very well equipped to guard somebody like Shea who relies on speed and shiftiness. Like Derek White's defensive IQ is off the charts. So for me, that was kind of the story of that game, was like, yeah, I don't think we needed Jason Tatum even to play to win that game. I do think we needed Derek White in that particular game.
So I think you're right that every team deals with injury issues. And I'm not just talking about the one game. Because, yeah, if Derek White played, we might play 2 points better and win that game. I don't want to base everything I think about this team off like a 2-point differential in a single game.
But I think that's kind of been the story of this season of like, we've had a couple really bad nights where we got blown out. For the most part, this season when the Celtics lose, it's by 1 to 7 points. Like this Celtics team, just every loss is a pretty close loss.
No, we play the best teams close. But if you're going to make if this guy wasn't injured, OKC didn't have Hartenstein tonight, which has been one of their best players. They didn't have Jalen Williams, who's been their second best player. So every team's had injuries, and you kind of need to account for that night to night. I think not every team has a top 5 player MVP caliber working his way back. And that's really the difference between the Celtics and every other team. Where, if Shea had been out all season, was just coming back now, you would have to account for the Thunder getting much better because of that. And I think you have to look at this team as almost not a finished product, even though we're 3/4 of the way through the season. And normally you would know exactly who the team's going to be. And I feel like I do know who this team is right now, which is not a team that's going to win the championship without Jason Tatum. And the hope is, the way you find hope and say this could be a championship year, is if Jason Tatum continues to progress and continues to get better and gets back to close to what he was last year, that's when you kind of see the possibilities of making it out of the East, past Detroit and Cleveland, and then maybe winning in the finals, depending on who's there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I think for this team to win a title, Jason Tatum has to return to some version of who he was prior to the injury, whether or not that's top 5 MVP candidate Jason Tatum or just the all-star, all-NBA caliber guy that is just a incredibly versatile defender, that is a great passer, that rebounds at an elite level.
His defense is looking good.
His defense looks great.
If I was another NBA superstar, if I was a Luka Doncic or one of these guys that doesn't show up in shape and play defense, how embarrassed would you be right now? Just a guy who missed 9 months with an Achilles comes back in great shape and is just playing lockdown defense every minute he's out there.
I mean, I think it's a very fair point. You look at somebody like Luka Doncic, who is leading the league in scoring right now, is leading his team in points, rebounds, and assists, is doing all these things.
And is somehow not a top 5 MVP candidate.
He's a traffic cone on defense. Outside of what Laker fans will say, not one of
I don't even think they're defending him at this point. I don't know why I just threw a stray at Luka.
He really caught one there. But it's a fair point of he had every single thing going for him and is horrible on defense. Jason Tatum had everything going against him and is fantastic at defense.
I'd be making excuses for Tatum right now if he wasn't playing defense.
And not even excuses. It'd be hey, he just had an Achilles. Yeah. It's super fair.
What do you expect?
He came back and he looks great. No, I mean, I think Jason Tatum is obviously going to be the difference maker between, this team, even before he came back. If he didn't come back this season, I think an Eastern Conference Finals run could have been possible. I would not have picked us to come out of the East, but I think he is that caliber difference maker. It's frustrating to have these games, especially the Spurs game. And I think for one of the first times all season, I feel like the national sports media is on our side. I think Jaylen Brown's season has been underrated and undervalued all year long. Just consistently too low on MVP rankings. Consistently, the Celtics were not given enough credit for how well they were performing.
I think I see him on a lot of MVP rankings, to be fair.
He is now.
Like, he is getting up there.
But like a month ago, he was 6th or 7th or 8th in Bleacher Report's whatever MVP. And it's like, no, they were still the 2nd seed in the East a month ago. But no, I did see Stephen A. lost his mind, which is fun. Brian Windhorst, I've seen a bunch of kind of national media guys be like, it's insane that he was thrown out of that Spurs game. And I think to their credit as well, I was watching today and they were talking about this Thunder game and specifically about Jaylen Brown's recent, I don't want to say feud, but his opinions on the referees in the NBA and their application of the rule. It's straight up a
feud. It's getting to like
and
Chris
called
Paul
it out
levels.
And was like, yeah, SGA has been getting these calls all year. And I think the NBA in general, if you're not a Thunder fan, you've had a moment this year where you're like, how is he getting every single call? And one thing that I picked up on specifically that I think Windhorst was talking about, and they showed an example from the game, SGA has an arm bar where he drives in from the top of the key, shoves his forearm into somebody, sends them flying, and then pulls up and either gets a foul call or there's just no call for it. We've talked about, and there's been at least, I want to say 3 games this season that the Celtics probably lost because Jaylen Brown gets called for an offensive foul for doing the exact same thing. And so I do think there's inconsistency there. You know, he's the reigning MVP in all of this, but there's not a uniform standard being applied to certain plays across the league. And Jaylen Brown all year has been getting the shit kicked out of him. We've been saying for months, like the refs hate Jaylen Brown for some reason. He's getting hacked when he has the ball. He's getting called for offensive fouls. I don't think I've ever seen in a single season this many missed trip calls specifically against one player. Yeah. Jaylen Brown has been tripped more than, as far as I can tell, like a single player has in a season, and is just not getting the call. So I understand his frustration. I understand why he blew up the way he did in the Spurs game, which may be the most upset I've ever seen him.
Oh, yeah.
But it's
Let's talk Spurs game.
Let's talk about
it. We've brought it up a few times. I've rewatched it, the ejection, a couple times now. And the way it plays out, right, there's a missed call at one end. There's a push. It's pretty clear. It's not a huge push, but the guy puts his hand, Stephen Castle puts his arm into Jaylen's hip. Jaylen goes out of bounds as a result. It's not a flagrant foul, but it's called 9 times out of 10. Jaylen Brown gets a quick tech after that. Like, he says, I got pushed. Ref says, okay. And then he goes like, come on. And boom, tech. Then he just like starts walking towards the guy like, what's going on? Something NBA players do all the time. Second ref tosses him. After that, he loses it.
Yep.
Like a beef stew Isaiah Hartenstein level, like trying to run at the ref. All the teammates holding him back.
Almost punch Sam Hauser just to get him out of the way.
Sam Hauser in the face. I think it would be a much bigger story, and the entire national media would be on Jaylen Brown's side if he just like kind of looked confused and left. Like, he didn't do enough to get tossed until he got tossed, if that makes sense. And, like, clearly, the ref was in the wrong there, but I feel like Jaylen almost justified being tossed with his reaction to getting tossed. And I wish he hadn't done that part.
Yes and no. I do think, and this is something that, like, I grew up a very big baseball fan, and this is something that managers will get tossed. And we've seen it in the NBA. Coaches will get tossed intentionally to light a fire. Once you're out of the game, once Jaylen Brown gets thrown out, I am kind of okay with him being like, I'm going scorched earth in the hopes that this fires up my team. Because it's not going to do anything more. Like, he's not going to get a suspension for the way he reacted. He didn't, outside of Sam Hauser, he didn't hit anybody. And so, like, on the one hand, I'm like, okay, he's been a leader all season, especially for some of these young guys. Maybe he's like, all right, I can't be here to help them. I'm just going to like really send a message that they should be pissed off about this by demonstrating how pissed off I am. Like, I get it from that perspective. I just...
Oh, he's got reason to be angry. Like, totally agree.
And I don't even think that the way he reacted after getting ejected, like, that wasn't mentioned. Stephen A.,
I think it's been mentioned a lot. Every time I see Like, the headline, like, Jaylen Brown was tossed out of this game. Then there's a clip of him almost punching Sam
After the
Hauser and getting.
ejection. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, when it's shown, if you didn't watch the game and you just saw it on ESPN, they're like,
Yeah.
Jaylen Brown got tossed. What do you guys think? And then they show a highlight package of Jaylen Brown freaking out and, like, having to be held back and stuff. And it's like, yeah, he probably should have gotten tossed for that.
And it's like, oh, no,
But
no,
that
he got
happened
tossed before
after.
that.
So,
Yeah.
like, it's a little out of order. But I think if they were like, Jaylen Brown got tossed, and then the clip was of him just standing there, being like, come on, ref, then I think it would have been a much bigger story. And I think a lot more attention would be on the refs from that. When freaking out in one game doesn't always put the pressure on them like it should.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are few guys in NBA media right now as big as Stephen A. And Stephen A's reaction was the ref who tossed Jaylen Brown should be consigned to only officiating Wizards games for the rest of the season. So it does seem like there was some like justified outrage at the officials for how they blew this. And I think I've heard it talked about of like, this is a national TV game. It's the top two seeds in either conference. It's Wemby
MVPs
versus
going
Jalen.
up. Yeah.
MVPs, like, and I think that part of it speaks on its face. I think the fact that Tyler Ford, who was the crew chief that gave Jaylen Brown his first technical, didn't give him the second, also kind of speaks for itself. And if you look at it, and what the other referee who did give Jalen that second tech and kick him out of the game was like, yeah, well, he had turned around and then he started walking back to Tyler Ford. And it's like, so? Tyler Ford didn't feel like that was enough to give him a second tech. Why are you intervening? Like, I don't know. I think that it's just frustrating. It does feel like, and again, we're both Celtics fans. We're not hiding that in any way. He's been officiated differently all season than someone like a SGA, than someone like a Luka, and then some of these guys who do like rely on foul calls to get a lot of their points. And Jaylen Brown after that Thunder game is like, yeah, I don't like foul baiting is not how I score in the NBA. And we've seen that all season. Like he is developing all the other parts of his game, and SGA is just as good from the mid-range as Jaylen Brown, but when you're pushing off with a forearm to create the space for that shot, one of them's getting called and the other one isn't. And it's frustrating to see that, especially in these games where it's like, this is the stage for the best and the brightest, and still in that game. Like, Jaylen Brown, I want to say, got called for 2 offensive fouls. One was Chet fell down on a rebound where, like, Jaylen Brown touches him on the shoulder and Chet Holmgren looks like he's been clotheslined. And the other one,
Chet
Alex Caruso,
does
just falls
weigh
over.
98 pounds. So
Soaking wet, and that's fair. I don't know what to say about that. But, no,
it is
I mean,
weird, though. Like, normally when you see these guys who just accidentally get a ton of fouls and get fouled on like touch calls a lot, it's usually a rookie or like a Daniel Tice style big man, just like a end of the bench big who's maybe a little too physical, and they're like, fine, we'll give him a foul. It's rarely like
Jordan
a finals
Walsh and
MVP.
Ugo have been getting that all year long, and that's understandable.
It's a pretty normal rookie whistle for those guys. I don't know how conspiracy brained we want to get on this. I just don't know if it's like the marketability of Jaylen Brown, kind of things he said. I don't know what he's like around the officials, like person to person, if something in there is causing it. But it is weird. Like, he does get more calls in against him than typically the All-NBA former Finals MVP candidate does.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if we want to get really conspiracy brained, what are the odds Jason Tatum didn't play because Lou Dort has tried to kill 17 guys this year?
That's not a conspiracy. That's just why we kept him out of that game.
But I think it's fair to mention, and I saw this was like a random tweet, I don't remember from who, but somebody was like, yeah, Jaylen Brown gets ejected in the Spurs game for doing what Draymond Green does every single game.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, Luka Doncic spends 90% of every basketball game complaining about calls he did or didn't get. And it's like, Jaylen Brown, it is frustrating.
If you wanted to build one, is the Nike link.
Nike,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Jaylen Brown has talked about this fairly openly before, where he feels he doesn't get certain awards and certain accolades,
recognition,
because of things he said about Nike. Nike funds a lot of NBA stuff. They fund USA Basketball, where they
fund a lot of sweatshops too.
they do. They're funded by a lot of sweatshops. They
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
fund
yeah.
sweatshops just for the love of the game. But yeah, he's talked about their labor practices and has famously refused to wear Nike before. And I don't know, maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I don't think I have like any proof of that, but it does seem like he's usually the guy who doesn't get the call and doesn't get the award.
Didn't make it
And
onto the Olympic team.
I can see, yeah, well, I think the Olympic team was pretty cut and dry that
Yeah.
I mean, they're a subsidiary of Nike. Even like guys who are signed to Under Armour have a lower chance of getting on the Olympic team. Like it's a pretty Nike dominated team. So I don't even think that one's much of a conspiracy theory. So I can like see from his perspective why he would think that.
Yeah, it is. Listen, like, the Celtics didn't play their best basketball against the Spurs. They didn't play their best basketball against the Thunder. The defense inside the three-point arc was just atrocious yesterday. And, some of that was SGA gets every single call he wants. Some of it was they're getting away with stuff that Jaylen Brown wouldn't get away with. And some of it was just like, we gave up a lot of layups. We gave up some easy shots. And so, like, that's also part of the frustration is Derek White doesn't play in this game, and our interior defense. I think it's also worth noting, going back the last couple of games, Keita has not looked great.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a real, like, if Keita isn't anchoring our interior defense right now, we do have a little bit of a problem. And that's where I started this off by being like, if Derek White plays in this game, we might not. Derek White needs to pick up the slack for if Keita is not anchoring our interior defense. And that's a little bit of a scary thought, but that's just kind of how that game went.
Yeah, I mean, there were some bright spots in that game. You say
Yeah.
our defense is terrible, but we held best offense in the league to 104 points. So to me, that's not like a terrible game. We were
missed
definitely giving them
20
mid-range
open threes as
shots. Like the SGA like step back mid-range shot just seemed like an unstoppable way for them to get a bucket when they really needed one. We really went on a big run when SGA was off the floor because I think we were able to just kind of deal with those guys, even though like AJ Mitchell and some of their other guards can score. They didn't have that like one big unstoppable weapon. So like a lot of our young guys versus their young guys, we actually were able to kind of hold our own. I mean,
I think
Ugo
our
got
best
11.
run of the game was when it was Ugo and Ron Harper and Jordan Walsh. Like, our bench unit went on a 20-something to 6 run in that second quarter.
Yeah.
And that was frustrating later in the game, where I believe I texted you in the fourth quarter, like, our bench was doing so good. Why haven't we seen at least one of those guys to close out the game? Ugo was on the floor a little bit, but I was like, no, like, Ron Harper was carrying us for portions of that second quarter. And he did get in the game late in the fourth quarter, but it did seem like Sam Hauser just didn't do a whole lot and was getting the lion's share of the fourth quarter, which kind of felt like it was going against what Joe's philosophy has been all season of, like, to close games, I'm playing who's hot, who's done well in this game. And it was frustrating to see the guys who lost us that lead that we built when we went on that 20-something to 6-point run stay on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I think they all played really well in that game. Like, the young Ugo, Ron Harper, Jordan Walsh. Like, those guys coming off the bench did bring a ton of energy, and that was exactly what we needed. But also, those were they were going up against the lineups without SGA and Chet. So I think there is kind of a, like, grade on the curve scale where guys always look a lot better coming off the bench because they're playing against the
guys
other
coming off the
bench team.
Yeah.
So I think they rose to the occasion, they won their minutes out there, and that's all you can really ask of them. I do think we're seeing Joe settle more into a rotation now. And we see this almost every season where at the beginning of the year, guys' minutes shoot up and down. We're trying to figure out lineups, who plays well together, who doesn't. And during that period, Joe was very, like, equal opportunity. Whoever's playing well stays out there. And now it seems like Hauser's a starter. Baylor's right there on the depth chart. Like, if we're missing a perimeter player, Baylor Shireman's going to start. And then after that, it's Ugo, Ron Harper, Walsh. Like, in that order. And we're starting to get, like, locked into that. And I think by the time the playoffs come around, there's going to be just an 8-man rotation, and we're going to kind of know who the 9th and 10th guys are if an injury happens.
Yeah, here's my hot take, and understanding that this is not traditional NBA coaching and has not traditionally been done, I wouldn't. Like, I wouldn't settle into a rotation. I would continue to be like, and my example for this that I'm going to go back to is a series that we watched together in a Cadoba in Boston, probably
20.
10 years ago at this point. No, it was Gerald Green being inserted into the lineup from the end of the bench against the Bulls, the
Yep.
Rondo Wade Butler Bulls. And I think it's a little different where, like, if we're down in a playoff series in the first round or whatever, Joe might just be like, all right, fuck it, Ugo, you're starting.
Yeah. No, I think that could easily happen. Where if we're going down in a series, if we've like been struggling on defense, if there's one guy who keeps going off against us, I could totally see Joe tapping one of those young guys on the shoulder and being like, Ugo or Jordan Walsh, like your job tonight is to go in and shut this guy down. And I mean, it's great to have those like utility wing defenders that you can like pop out in an emergency. And Gerald Green did that for us. Having him come in, he played great defense. He was able to knock down some shots. And he really swung that Bulls series. I think the 2017 Raptors are the kind of what I would be scared we are, where they had like 12, 14 guys on that team. They were all NBA caliber rotation players. And they had like a really good regular season because of it. But then, like, they played 12 guys, and it's kind of tough, especially for your stars, to get a rhythm when they're playing less minutes. Like, if you're playing, 30 minutes a night, you're just better playing your better players more. Like, it's kind of that simple when it comes to the playoffs. And I think there are going to be games where we're playing Jaylen Brown 38 minutes a night. And Derek White's going to have like a 42-minute a game night. And those are our best guys, so we're going to be better with them out there more. But that means we're going to have to cut somebody's minutes.
Yeah, no, I'm not proposing we
Yeah.
give Jalen or Derek or necessarily Pritchard or anything like that. I'm like, do we need to lock in Sam Hauser as a starter? Can we have a floating fifth starter spot depending on matchups, depending on like we lose game one to fucking whoever, Charlotte in the first round. Let's change the lineup game two and see like what do we have a better look? Do we have a better matchup?
Yeah.
What were we missing in game one? And I think part of that Raptors team was also really good and just went up against LeBron at the peak of his powers. So it's not like they lost because they lost because they were playing a vastly superior team, a vastly superior player. But I think like it's rare for a team to like a lot of NBA teams go into the playoffs being like, all right, let's really hope that our eighth and ninth guy are like as good as we hope they are because we're gonna need that. And I don't think we have that problem. I think it's all right, let's see like who's gonna be our eighth or ninth guy tonight. And the fact that we have my hot take, I think Ron Harper is going to end up playing a lot of minutes in the playoffs. I think he's, especially lately, it might just be, and we've
He's
seen all
good.
season, like different guys take off at different times. Jordan Walsh had that crazy December, but I think Ron Harper right now is showing a lot of stuff. And if he can keep it up going into the playoffs, I think he will earn a spot in the rotation, whether it's that 8 or that 9 spot. Obviously, you got to make room for Luka Garza, who knows exactly when Vucevic is coming back, so it's there's a lot of variables going on with this Celtics team, but I wouldn't shy away from being like, yeah, I don't care who's started this game. In the fourth quarter, play who played better. I don't care if it's the last 5 games of the season or game 6 of a playoff series. Like, if Ron Harper has 16 points and he's a plus 15 in 12 minutes in the first half, play him in the fourth quarter, even if he was doing that against a bench, because the games that we've won this season, especially when we've dug ourselves out of deficits and we've had some impressive comeback wins and all those kinds of things, have been carried by those energy guys who throughout the course of the season were given the opportunity to carry that energy into the fourth quarter, where again, they're playing the countering bench from the opposite team for some of those minutes. But also that fourth quarter, the Celtics starters were playing OKC's starters, and it was our worst quarter offensively. And it wasn't particularly close. Like, we needed some more energy in that quarter. We looked stale. We looked frustrated on the offensive end. Nobody could really find a rhythm. And it did a little bit devolve into like an iso ball kind of game, which just has not been where the Celtics have thrived all season. We have some great iso scorers, But when they're doubling up on Peyton Pritchard, when they're loading up on Jaylen Brown, the way that we've been able to like maintain runs all season long has been having those energy guys who can just like make something happen, come out of nowhere and get us a second chance opportunity. Baylor's been great at that in the last couple
Yeah.
weeks, and I think that's why he's expanded his role so much, is like creating those extra opportunities, which I
Yeah,
love Sam
and
Hauser. He's an elite shooter. He doesn't do that the way that five guys off our bench do.
yeah, and I remember, I think it was our last episode, I was saying that I would keep Baylor in the starting lineup and move Sam Hauser to the bench just because of kind of the activity he provides and the rebounding, the chaos, the steals, with the ability to shoot and shoot quickly. Like that kind of no-dip three has been going in lately, which is kind of crazy to say. I don't think it's set in stone, that fifth starter spot. I think it's probably Baylor or Sam who ends up there, and then the other one's probably locked into a bench role. I still think we go 8 guys, I think, but there's some wiggle room there, of course. I think Sam's shooting just provides a level to our offense that the other guys don't. And if we're gonna win big games, 3-point shooting needs to be a big part of it. Like, we've definitely won games off the hustle this year. I don't think, in Eastern Conference Finals versus the Pistons, we're going to be able to win off hustle alone.
No, maybe not, but the Celtics have not ranked as one of the better 3-point shooting teams in the league all year, and just suddenly expect
I
that to
think we
turn
have the
around in a
personnel,
playoff
though.
series.
Like, well, we don't.
We've had the same personnel all season. The only difference is we added Jason Tatum, but like we've
Yeah.
had Derek White and Peyton. Yeah,
Don't
but also
think
what is
that's
his
a
3-point
nothing
percentage right now?
addition.
He's
Don't act
No,
like
no.
Jason Tatum
I
doesn't
get that.
create 3-pointers.
No. For sure he does. What I'm saying is at this point we've gotten a sample size, and I've mentioned this before, is like I think part of what determines how we do in the playoffs is what happens with Derek White shooting, what happens with Peyton Pritchard shooting. We saw it last night with Lou Dort, who was an elite 3-and-D defender, a wing player. This season has gotten like 10% worse from 3, and at a certain point you're like, that might just be who he is this season. Maybe not forever, but like they're not shooting it well right now. Sam Hauser shoots 25% from 3 last night. At what point in a game?
Well, he's
and
shooting
again, we're
39% from 3 this season.
For the
he
season,
shot
sure.
42 for the year.
But we're talking playoff series.
We're not going to bench guys game
long...
to game in the playoffs because they started shooting slowly. That's just not a philosophy I agree with.
Yeah, if Sam Hauser is 2 for 7 and it's the fourth quarter,
he should keep shooting.
I'd rather put in somebody who like doesn't need to hit a 3 to be useful.
I've just seen too
And Sam
many
Hauser's
games where Sam Hauser is 2 for 7 from 3, and then he ends the game 7 for 12. Like, he can get hot so quickly from 3, and one half a game sample size is not going to change how I feel about his shooting.
No, and I'm not saying Sam Hauser's a bad shooter by any, like he's an elite 3-point shooter. I think when the Celtics in the past, honestly, like go back 3 years, 5 years, whatever, since Joe Mazzulla took over, it's like, yeah, anytime the Celtics lose, the threes just didn't fall. They were still good threes, and we've built a team. It feels like maybe for the first time in Joe Mazzulla's era, where it's like we can win games when threes don't fall. All season long, we have been winning games when 3-pointers aren't falling, and to rely on the same philosophy of like, you just gotta live or die by whether or not Sam Hauser's hitting those threes. Like, I don't want to do that if we have other options.
I don't think we're living or dying by it. I think this year, like Joe's talked about, the philosophy has shifted a lot more to winning the possession battle rather than winning the like points per possession battle. Where in previous years we focused a lot on shooting threes because you get statistically more points per shot with a 3 than with a 2. And this year it's been much more about the offensive rebounds, the not turning the ball over, forcing steals, so we end up just shooting more times than the other team. But I don't think those two are mutually exclusive. Like, we can't focus on winning the possession battle, but we're still trying to get good shots when we shoot. And a Sam Hauser 3 is a good shot. Like, statistically, it just is. A 40% three-point shooter shooting a 3 is super valuable. And his ability to shoot at that percentage, running off screens with very little space at the end of shot clocks, helps our offense in a way that the other guys just don't have that skill set yet. And we've had, not you and me, but like Celtics media in general has kind of had that argument since Joe's become a coach, where it's like the threes, when they're not falling, look bad. And I think the proof is in the pudding, where Joe, like, since Joe's become a coach and we started shooting a higher percentage of our shots from three, we just win a lot more games. Like, I understand you can point to single
better
games.
three-point shooters every year since Joe Mazzulla became a head coach until this season, when Derek White took a big step back, Peyton Pritchard took a big step back, Sam Hauser is stabilized, but started the season really rough.
I still believe
we don't
in those
have
guys.
the same shooters.
Like, I mean, you make a point, like, the shooters aren't the same. Like, we don't have Drew Holiday, we don't have Kristaps, we don't have Al, who are all, like, 40% from three. The Derek White threes, I'm not that concerned about it long term. Like, I understand he hit a slump this season, and so did Peyton Pritchard. I think a lot of that had to do with different offensive responsibilities, where they're handling the ball a lot more, and they're, shooting off the dribble at the end of shot clocks, when typically that would be Tatum's possession. They're not getting as many wide open catch and shoots. The way I think about them as offensive players has not dramatically changed since the beginning of the year. I think Derek White and Peyton Pritchard are still the shooters they were last year. I understand we don't have the same, depth of shooters, though. So, Hugo Gonzalez isn't the same level of a corner three shooter that Drew Holiday was, where he was shooting, 45% from the corner and was, a super overqualified offensive player to be playing in that role. Where now our 8th, 9th, and 10th guys aren't as good as shooters. Kata isn't the stretch five that we've had before.
Listen, I think Luka Garza and Kristaps are pretty equivalent, from three at least, but no. I hear your point. I
still think the guys who are on this team who are shooters should still shoot threes, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I just don't want that to be... And again, you talked about... I think it was a little bit of a lazy narrative in the past, where it's like the Celtics lost because they didn't have a good night from three, and then the next morning you could always see 80% of those threes that they took that didn't go in were great shots, were open or wide open shots. It's not that they shouldn't have been taking those shots. And my argument in the past years that rings especially true this season is all right, the wide open shots, you're getting them, you're not hitting them. OKC had it last night. They missed so many wide open threes that we were giving them, and they were all right, that fourth quarter, we're going inside the three-point arc. That's how we're winning this game. And this Celtics team has shown a capacity and a capability to win basketball games in other ways, and I don't want us to stop embracing that. We've won more games off chaos than off pure, we're going to huck as many threes as humanly possible, and the percentages will bear them out.
Yeah, I just don't know if I agree with that, because there have been games where the first half we've shot terrible from three, then we catch fire in the third and go on, a 22-13 run, and that's why we win the game. A lot of times we have bad shooting quarters that we forget about because we end up winning the game. But when we lose, we look back at the box score and say, what went wrong? And we see the ugly 3 number in the second quarter, or the fourth quarter. It's we went cold from 3. We should have done something differently. But those things usually revert to the mean. There's just been so many games where one hot shooting quarter is the reason we won. In any game, you can point to 10 things and say that's the reason we won. But it goes up and down, and I don't think you can judge off a partial game whether or not we want to change the offensive identity. And
No, but I think
since
the
Joe's been
offensive identity
coached,
has been fluid. Like right now, the Celtics on the season, not like this game or what, on the season, the Celtics are shooting 36% from three. It's about league average.
yeah,
And they've been winning, especially that run that we just went on where we won, I want to say like 14 out of 17 games. The three-point shooting was not what was carrying it. It was the defensive identity. It was winning the rebounding battle. It was
it was
emphasizing
the possession
creating
game. Yeah.
turnovers. Yeah. And so those are the things that
I don't
right
think
now the players who provide that are more likely to be Ron Harper, Ugo Gonzalez, Baylor Shireman, Jordan Walsh than it is Sam Hauser. And that's the point I'm making.
Yeah, I can see that. I think Sam's defense is a little underrated there. Like, I don't think
He's super solid. He's not creating extra possessions.
I think the counter argument would be that he just fouls at a much lower rate than those guys, which does save us possessions. Where the other guys save us possessions with kind of flashier plays, where they're getting more steals, they're reaching in and knocking balls away, they're
I
being
think they're
super
offensive
aggressive
rebounding.
Yeah, super aggressive on the glass. Sam Hauser does those things to a lesser level, but because of that, we're also picking up like 2 to 3 less fouls in the game. Because we're not reaching in at balls, because we're not banging guys out of the way on the offensive glass, we're like Ugo and Jordan Walsh, those guys get a lot of fouls. And that doesn't stand out as much watching the game as like a really cool steal and dunk, but it does give the other team 2 points a lot of times. And 2 points is 2 points on either end. So I think that's kind of, it seems to be the reason Joe gets frustrated and pulls those guys out, is the difference in fouling. And then when you add that with Sam's shooting and what he does for us on just like a shot efficiency level, then it becomes much more of a debate. And that's why we've seen their minutes go back and forth. But like, I'm not married to like Sam over any of those guys. I think especially like a year or two from now, we could see him kind of drop down the rankings of our
order.
wings.
Yeah. And I don't want this to be on picking on Sam Hauser or anything like.
No.
It's more the practice or like the praxis of, are we valuing shooting or are we valuing defense, creating. And
Well,
I think
also
one thing I will say
the
is
shooters of last year.
Yeah.
That Sam's become more valuable because lineups need so many shooters in them. And when you don't have a stretch five, it becomes a lot more valuable for the other guys to be good shooters.
But we've got Luka Garza. I also want to say, I've been watching in recent games. They're still committing some dumb fouls. Ugo especially is just like full speed running into. Jordan Walsh and Ugo have been the two biggest with foul trouble. They are committing, it feels like, significantly less than earlier in the season shooting fouls. And I think that's
I
big.
think they've gotten better.
Yeah, I think that they're committing more like just silly fouls, like reaching in or something like that, but I'm not noticing it showing, like they're not sending guys to the line nearly as much as they were earlier in the season, and I think that's heartening, whether it's for this season or beyond. Like, it does seem like they are taking that to heart, and Joe, obviously, his frustration seems to be getting through to them, so that's good.
Yeah, no, I think those guys have progressed a lot this season, and that's one of the reasons where, like, if I was to rank our wings based on how much they're going to help us win tonight, or if I was going to rank them based on what their long-term potential was, I think it would be two totally different lists. Just because we have, like, Ugo and Jordan Walsh are super young. A lot of the knocks on them are kind of like rookie mistakes they make. And those are things that get cleared up, like, in year 2, 3, 4 in the league. So I'm not saying, like, anything negative about those guys long-term. Just sometimes the vets are better. We touched on this a little. I did want to talk about how have you felt about Jason Tatum the last 3 games. He still doesn't seem 100% to me. I've been really encouraged by the defense. I've been really encouraged by how he's getting to the rim. He seems super confident on drives. He's not, like, worried about where he's going to step or where he isn't. Isn't really shying away from contact. He's willing to go straight into a guy's chest. He's been rebounding pretty well. It does seem like when he goes up for a jump shot, he's really avoiding contact. Like, anytime where he's in the air, he's really nervous about getting hit, which is totally understandable, but it has led to when he's shooting even on the perimeter, he'll go up and then lean away. He'll go up and like lean forward to avoid the guy. And
Yeah.
past Jason Tatum would go straight up, get fouled, and then probably still make it. Where now it's like he's shooting kind of leaners and floaters from three.
Yeah, I think that's been an interesting development. Obviously, the last episode we recorded was after his comeback game against the Mavs. And so we've seen him a little bit against the Cavs and against the Spurs. He missed the game against the Thunder last night. I was really encouraged in that game against the Cavs because that was our takeaway from the Mavs game. In his return was like, ooh, he's looked great, but did seem like he was still a little hesitant about initiating contact, specifically on the offensive end. And under the basket fighting for rebounds. I was like, oh, he still looks like he doesn't want to get undercut, like he doesn't want to get tangled up with somebody in the air. In Cleveland, he was much more aggressive. He was driving to the basket, like you said, with a lot of authority, with a lot of confidence. He was initiating, he was getting into guys' chests and going up with the ball, where there was a risk of like, it was him and 2 or 3 defenders and maybe another Celtic, like under the rim in the paint. And he was still going up pretty confidently for layups. So I was really encouraged about the embrace of physicality in that game. I think I noticed more of what you're talking about in the Spurs game, where it just felt like his jumper looked a little bit different, like he was compensating for some things.
I was mainly thinking about the Spurs game.
Yeah. So I would say, like, that Cavs game, it looked like he wanted to make a statement of, like, no, the paint is still an area that I can operate very effectively in. And I was super happy with that. We won that game. I walked away super impressed. And then in the Spurs game, it was a little bit... And they have a ton of quick, young guys at every position. Like, the Spurs are just... They're agile, they're mobile. And it did seem like trying to navigate that, especially in the air, he was compensating. He was like adjusting his shot in the ways that you talked about. It did feel like there was less straight up and down jump shots. There was one that like was almost comical. He took a 3-pointer, which I believe he made, but he started behind the line. He ended like 2 feet in front of the 3-point line, like leaning forward because the defender had been flying sideways past him.
Which normally he'd get fouled, fall down, shoot free throws. It's tough for me sometimes to know if that's an injury avoidance that he's doing or if it's kind of a Wemby effect. Because in this game we saw it with a few guys, and I've seen it with teams playing against the Spurs. Guys do weird things when Wemby's out there. And I think that was probably a shot he wouldn't have normally taken. Like, he probably would have gone to the rim, but he saw Wemby down there, and it's like, well, I can't drive, and the shot clock's winding down, so I can't pass, so I have to shoot this. And then you end up taking jump shots in, like, tight spaces where you don't feel comfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I've met, not Wemby, but I met Taco Fall, and you do
I think you're just going to say, differently. I met a tall guy.
I did meet a tall guy. His name was Taco Fall. Yeah. You do act differently
I feel like
around
we're 6.
Human beings.
We're just like, hey, I met a
size.
tall guy today.
Yeah. No, I mean, I imagine if I was on a basketball court with Wemby and my job was to score the ball, I would not want to get particularly close to him. Obviously, everybody at this point knows what he's capable of as a shot blocker, whether that's in the paint or on the perimeter. Like, he impacts the gravity of an entire offense with just his height and his length. So I get that. I think maybe there's also some injury avoidance stuff in there. And at the end of the day, only Jason Tatum really knows. But I think it's less about the hesitance to drive into the paint. Like, it wasn't the shot selection of like, oh, he chose to pull up from there instead of driving further. It was the angles that he was shooting from that I think are more in line with what you were suggesting. That, you know, even if he doesn't want to drive into the paint and confront Wemby, which is an intimidating prospect, the old Jason Tatum in some of those circumstances would have just gone straight up and down on a jump shot, would have looked a little bit smoother. One thing that Jason Tatum has kind of always been as a jump shooter is like he's got very solid fundamentals. His jumper has always looked very smooth, very methodical, and that's something that
it sometimes gets a little hippie Like there's kind of like an air hump into it where he's like he does the wave with his body a little bit. It's not exactly like Klay Thompson. Like he's got a
No,
he's
I've
Jason
always
Tatum.
factored. I think his height is a little bit a part of that, where like the
Yeah.
taller you get, outside of like Kevin Durant and guys who are just freaks of nature, tall guys just have different body mechanics for jumpers. But I think it's going to be something that I'm paying closer attention to moving forward, is like how he's engaging with his jump shot when there's the possibility of contact, and seeing, because Jason Tatum, there were few guys in the league that I feel as confident of like that's about to be a 4-point play while he's still in the air. And that, I'm not going to say it was a huge part of his game. Maybe 2% of his points came on 4-point plays, but they were significant when they happened, and it was something that he never seemed to shy away from. If I was recovering from a devastating lower body injury, I'd be pretty worried about getting undercut. But again, he's been practicing for over a month, 5-on-5, and playing for a couple games now. I'm like, he's still probably shaking, so he's still definitely shaking some rust off and getting used to NBA action. And hopefully, as we have, I want to say 16 games left in the season, he can just continue to adjust, continue to get better, continue to find old Jason Tatum habits of scoring the ball. I mean, he had 20 against the Cavs, or was that the Spurs? He
had 20
not
against
looking
the Cavs.
bad. Yeah, he's not looking bad scoring the ball. The efficiency isn't there yet, but I don't have any real concerns about that. So yeah, just something to keep an eye on moving forward.
He had 20 against the Cavs, 24 against the Spurs. I think
That's
a lot
what
of
it
the
was.
hesitancies I saw mainly in the Spurs game. Partly Wemby effect, partly rust coming off, but also it was his first game without Jaylen Brown. So there was nobody else to take end of shot clock, desperation threes, which isn't something he's been asked to do in like a year. So I think there's a lot of reasons in that game where kind of the rust came out a little bit more, and he's still got plenty of time to come back. But I do think this is going to be kind of the story of the next 16 games. And he's obviously going to go up and down, but it's going to be, as fans, kind of what we're worried about. Like, is he coming back 100? Is this him, you know?
Yeah.
You want to talk Bam a little?
I want to talk Bam a little bit for two reasons. One, we're going to talk about actually Bam. Two, we are playing the Wizards tomorrow. Who's scoring 84?
Jaylen Brown. He's got a
Jaylen
chip
Brown?
on his shoulder, angry at the league, needs to
Yep.
make a statement. That should be his 84 game.
I had Neemias Queta, but I'm looking forward to seeing it either way.
Was there another answer you had in mind of who could hit 84? I think Jaylen Brown's
Scal suggested Ron Harper was dropping 90, or that might have been Drew
I disagree.
on the broadcast. I'd like to see it. I think, listen, Ugo had the best Celtics rookie game since Larry Bird a couple weeks ago, so I think there's every opportunity he goes for it. Jordan Walsh, if he just remember, Jordan Walsh spent like a month averaging 16 at like 87% efficiency. We've got a couple guys who can do it. I think it's probably happening tomorrow, so everybody set your alarm clocks. But yeah, let's talk about Bam's soon to be broken record of 83 points in a game.
Do you think this does inspire people to also, like, it's kind of like the 4-minute mile in track, where for like 100 years nobody could break a 4-minute mile, and then somebody did it, and then within a year like 30 people had done it, where as soon as you know a record can be broken, guys want to go for it. So do you think the rest of the season we just see guy after guy going for 80 plus points? Yes, that's
I think we do, honestly. So
Okay.
I was surprised the game after they cut away from the Celtics Spurs game to watch Bam chase the record and break it. The game after that was Luka and the Lakers against Anthony Edwards and the Wolves. And I honestly was expecting either Ant or Luka to like get that notification on their phone and be like, screw it, we're going. I'm like, the Lakers don't play a lot of defense. Anthony Edwards could really. But also, like, this is one of, and the league has obviously noticed this and is working to address this, or says they are. This is one of the seasons where tanking has started the earliest and has been the most intense. I don't know if you saw this. I think it was last night. Bilal Coulibaly on the Wizards hit a 3 to tie the game against, I forget who they were playing, with like .4 seconds left, and the entire Wizards bench came over and started shoving him because they were mad because the Wizards were supposed to lose. It's out of control at this point. There are teams that desperately want to lose. I don't think teams want to be remembered as the one that got that scoring record broken against them, but there's a lot of teams that are not looking to play really good defense right now.
Yeah, no, I think there's going to be opportunities for guys to do it. I'm honestly torn internally if it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing for guys to go for these scoring records. Because there's been a lot of talk about, like, if Bam's record deserves an asterisk or not. Just because of the number of free throws, they were clearly going for it. Like, as a team, like, Spo was keeping him in there. Everybody was just passing him the ball. Personally, I
intentionally fouling to get more shots is that was like the big objection for me.
Yeah, but here's the thing. They've done those in all of these super high scoring games. Like, I remember Devin Booker's, like, 73 or whatever he had versus us, where they were just selling out it. Like, it wasn't basketball at a point. They were just trying to see how high they could get him. Wilt, they were fouling, like, starting in the second quarter to get him more possessions to 100. Like, every time we've seen these, it's been forced in some way. But also, so, like, I don't think it deserves an asterisk, because anytime you get over 50, something abnormal's happening, where you're trying to get that high. People act like these super high scoring games happen by accident. I don't know if you know this. Kobe wasn't passing in that 82 game. I don't know if you watch it. He wasn't just like happening to be open a bunch that night. These guys are going for scoring records. So I don't think Bam's 82 is like different in a meaningful way than anybody else's. And I do kind of appreciate the art of like who could get the highest scoring night. Like, it is kind of a fun thing. And if you're playing the Wizards or one of these tanking games where, as fans, we're not going to get a good basketball game anyway, it's not a solution to tanking, but I'm not going to, like, hate on a guy for going for 85 against the Wizards and not playing a real basketball game, because it wasn't going to be a real basketball game anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I
also always hated the argument that, like, Kobe was in the conversation with Jordan because of the 82 game. Like, somehow that record put him, like, up into the top 5 NBA players all time. I always thought that was silly, and I do feel like passing him kind of shows how silly that argument was.
Yeah, I mean, we are a Celtics podcast, so I know that the people listening to us are probably not who this is, like, about or intended for, but, like, I think we both agree that Kobe is not as high up in the all-time greatest players conversation as every Lakers fan thinks he is. The idea that he's, above LeBron or right below Jordan or anything like that, frankly, is silly. And I grew up a Kobe fan before I was a Celtics fan, so I'm saying that, like, I recognize it. I think and again, I remember where I was, and it's one of the only times I've ever left work crying when Kobe died. So, like, I think the tragedy has part of it. Bam doesn't get the hate that he got for that game if Kobe Bryant is living in Los Angeles right now, like, making movies. I think that's part of it. Like, genuinely. And I understand that, and there's emotion there, and there's tragedy there, and it's a whole thing. I think there are people who never wanted to see that record get broken because they want him to have that piece of basketball history and that memory of him to exist. And it's no small feat to have the third highest points in NBA history in a game. And so I think that part of it might be a little bit people might be over attached to that part of it. But no, I mean, for me, one of the most fun things that I can kind of imagine if somebody is going to break this record, I really want to see Steph go for it and just hit trees. Like, that would genuinely, I would enjoy that so much. Yeah. I think it's surprising because
Steph would honestly be fun.
Kobe
LeBron would be fun. Like, if any of the older guys
LeBron
in the
would have
league,
been fun
if
5 years
Durant,
ago.
if LeBron... Here's the thing, if he's going up against, like, the Utah Jazz's third team, and they're like, I don't know, Luka's not playing tonight, let's just, like, have a fun game where LeBron takes every shot, I would kind of be down for that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's the same
I'd
player
watch
he
it,
was.
and I would love every second of it. Yeah. I think he has less of a chance now of like getting that kind of total. I want
Yeah.
to say his career high is still like 61 or something like that. I think 2017
He was never...
LeBron was facing this Wizards team, maybe, but no, I think Steph Curry would be fun just because nobody has ever. I've seen a lot of the great players in my lifetime who are currently in the league, who just recently retired. Like, I've seen them live. I've seen Giannis, I've seen Jokic, I've seen Luka, I've seen KD, I've seen all these guys play basketball. I've never been more afraid of a player at a Celtics game than Steph Curry when he starts heating up, because it's 3-3-3-3, and you're like, oh, we had an 8-point lead 40 seconds ago. So I think it would be really fun to watch him go for that. I think Kobe was a great scorer in a very inefficient era, so nobody cared that how many shots it was taking him to get the scoring totals he did, but he averaged 35 in a season. Like, he did some crazy stuff. The fact that Bam Adebayo, who's averaging 18 or whatever, got this number, and the number of free throws that he took to do it, this would have been, if you had shown me just the stat line and not told me who it was or anything like that, I would have guessed that this was Joel Embiid a couple years ago. Because that is somebody who I'm like, yeah, he could get 45 free throws or whatever. It is surprising coming from Bam, who I've always loved, always wanted him on the Celtics, frankly. But his biggest thing has always been like, oh, he's not that aggressive offensively. So it is just genuinely surprising that he got it, which does make me wonder, like, who's the biggest dark horse to go for this record?
That's a good question. I think Bam doing it is super interesting, just because he was always a guy that fans would be like, oh, if he was only like super aggressive and took more shots, he'd be unstoppable. And it seems like one game he tried to do that, like to be really aggressive and take all the shots, and he scored 83 points. So, like, it does give some credence to the fan theory that he should be shooting more. And, like, maybe we see him average 25 in a season. I think it would be cool if he averaged, like, 25 after this, just because the Heat don't have a ton of, like, high-usage offensive weapons in the rotation. And, you know, if you could get 5 more points a game from him, I'm not saying he's going to go for 83 every night, but if you can get 5 more points out of Bam a night, then he's a much more effective player. U.S. biggest dark horse in the league, and I think that is a fun one.
Yeah.
Brandon Ingram, I could see trying to go for something like this. Personally, I want it to be one of the older guys, like I said. Even if there's a game where, like, the Kings are going up against another tanking team, and they just go, screw it, it's DeMar DeRozan shoots every shot night. I would be super on board for that.
Yeah.
And he's like both of those are guys who can get a shot no matter what, just because they shoot so much from the mid-range, because they ISO so often. Bam, it was just like he went up against a team where he was so much stronger than everybody else that they had to just foul him whenever he touched the ball. So I think it's either going to be like a big person like that, or maybe a fringe all-star who shoots a lot of mid-rangers.
Yeah. I think, again, prime Joel Embiid was basically unstoppable. I think it would be fun for him to have like a last hurrah like that. I think Kawhi would be a fun one. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. I think you made a good point about Roger Bannister, who did the 4-minute mile of like, once you know it's attainable, more people just go for it knowing that they can get there. Yeah, I think that we're going to see some fun scoring nights the rest of the season.
All right, you got, before we log off, any predictions for the Wizards game?
Ron Harper for 90, and no, any predictions? I think we win.
Yeah, I think we win by a lot. Like, I think we're coming off 2 losses, which has happened to this team almost never since I think the first week of the season. This is a team that usually comes back a lot stronger after a loss, so I think those plus Jalen's ejection is going to kind of light a fire under some guys, and we're going to come out super aggressive. And against a Washington team that's not trying very hard, I could see us winning by 20 plus points.
Yeah, and I think Jaylen Brown is going to have 35 at least.
Hell yeah. Glad we put that in the universe. Thank you everyone for listening. This has been Jason Confused. Like and subscribe if you have not already, and have a good week.